Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
Here we go. We are off and rolling. Looking forward to the program today. Amanda LaFratta a little under the weather, but we will be joined by Chris Landry and Josh Ward on the program. So that should be a good time, and the latest on Brew Mccoy. So want to get your thoughts. Had some great interaction with several viewers yesterday, so feel free to go ahead and get on board now. Give us your thoughts on Brew Mccoy. I will ask you this. Please like and subscribe this video so that Amanda and I can be a part of your day-to-day. We broadcast live at 8:30 each and every day. You can check us out on YouTube. We're there as well. So love your comments, love the likes, love the subscribes as well. And I want to say thank you to all those that have subscribed. Let's continue to grow our YouTube channel. Go to offthehooksports.com for more. You will certainly enjoy that. So the latest on Brew Mccoy. Brew Mccoy still not eligible to this point. I know that people have tons of questions about Brew Mccoy's eligibility. Spoke to one person, and it was Chris Landry, and Amanda encapsulated this. I thought did a fantastic job on YouTube, and that was he talked to USC's coaches. He said they didn't necessarily care so much if Brew Mccoy went and played at Tennessee, and why should they? But you have to wonder about the administration end of it. Was that done as promptly as it could have been? I think that's the question. So I visited with Josh Ward of The Sports Animal. Josh Ward was absolutely fantastic, as Josh Ward always is. So Josh Ward and I visited about the Brew Mccoy situation. And it's brought to you by Zool Beer Company. Zool Beer Company has the award-winning craft beers. That's right, award-winning worldwide craft beers and a great panoramic view of downtown. So here we visited with Josh Ward, brought to you by Zool Beer Company. Talk about the Brew Mccoy situation coming up. Chris Landry, and also is Hendon Hooker calling plays? Maybe. Here is Josh Ward and his thoughts as we discuss the whole Brew Mccoy situation.
Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com, your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. The Off the Hook podcast at offthehooksports.com or Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or wherever you go for your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Off the Hook with Dave Hooker starts now.
And it is the Ball Report with Josh Ward. I'm Dave Hooker. We want to go ahead and let you know that if you hit the subscribe button right now, Brew Mccoy will be eligible. I got it figured out, Josh. How's that?
Don't make promises you can't keep. Reportedly, that might have happened in L.A., and that's not gone over well in Knoxville.
Yeah, click on the subscribe and like button if you like Josh, if you like me, if you'd like us to be a part of your viewing pleasure from week to week. We are joined by Josh each week, brought to you by Zool Beer Company, the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports, award-winning worldwide type of beer. I mean, they're winning awards that are given out in the entire globe. It's pretty incredible, and a great panoramic view downtown to hang out. Josh's Brew Mccoy thing just kind of keeps rolling on, and I mean, short of him showing up as Jerry Rice, I don't know that anybody could live up to expectations. Just your thoughts on the whole situation, the way it's unfolded. It's been bizarre.
Yeah, that's happened in the past too, where the expectations then rise as the wait continues with previous players. I do really think that Brew Mccoy is an important piece of this offense. I say that in the present tense because he is practicing with the team and he has been running with the ones, and I think has gotten better as the month of August has gone along and shown why Tennessee brought him in. That's not to say that he's the number one receiver. That's Cedric Tillman, but Tennessee is having to replace Velus Jones and Javonte Payton, and other players will have a chance to step up, but I think there's more confidence in Brew than most of the other wide receivers right now. So he was brought in for a reason, and I think that's been shown on the field. But will he be able to show up and play against Ball State or even Pitt? Dave, it's difficult to say. You can throw out guesses if you want to, but that's really, I think, all it is. When we're talking about an NCAA case, and Tennessee fans have enough prior cases to point to say, yeah, we just don't know. So a week to go, Tennessee's coaches, I think, are obviously hoping to have him out there and preparing as if he could be, but you get close to a point where if you don't know that you're going to have him, you have to start planning for other players to go out there and play.
Well, and you were the first to bring it up. It's been, I guess, 3 weeks ago now that it was towards the beginning of preseason camp. Once you get into game week, things change. Well, this is recording on Thursday, depending on when you're watching, but game week essentially starts on Friday because of a Thursday night game. I mean, you got to put a game plan in place if they haven't started already.
Yeah, they do. So, yeah, that's part of the frustration, I'm sure, is that preparation is going one direction, and this waiting game is continuing over here with Brew Mccoy. And it's something you deal with. I'm sure it's more administrative in terms of trying to get things figured out, but conversations are still happening. It takes time, and that may sound like a minor detail, but I think to coaches it becomes a pretty big headache to have to deal with it. So, but there's nothing else you can really say, because fans are wondering, well, when's this going to happen? And there is no answer to that question. And Brew Mccoy, of course, is wondering, when is this going to get figured out? And he may be able to get some kind of idea behind the scenes, but that's all it is, because until you get that official decision, whatever it is, okay, you can play next Thursday, or we're going to sit you for a game or two. You just continue to wait. And with Aubrey Solomon, it was right up until the deadline, and I remember the stories of how stressful that was for him and his family trying to figure out what was going to happen. And then Cade May's year was different already because it was a COVID year and it was SEC only schedule, and it was a conference issue, not a national issue. And then Byron Young last year had to be really frustrating. And remember, on the field, there was an effect. Byron, he was transferring to Tennessee, and they were trying to get him going within the defense. Well, he didn't get to play those first couple of games. So by game number 3, he's out there, but still need to get warmed up. Dave Brew hasn't played a football game in roughly 20 months. He didn't play last year. So it's been a long time since he's played. So you want to have him for Pitt. You want to have him for Ball State so he can get some real game reps, in my opinion. Doesn't mean he can't help in game 2 if he has to sit game 1, but the more he can play, the better it will be to get him ramped up and going in this offense.
Yeah, I mean, entering game week, which Josh and I define by 6 days out of the game, I think you do, at least I do. But entering game week, so to speak, if they don't know anything, I would imagine the package is going to be somewhat limited for 2 reasons. One, because maybe he hasn't seen as many first-team reps because they didn't know if he'd be eligible. And 2, just like you mentioned, he hadn't played a lot of ball. If it's limited, that's fine, but you would like for it to be unlimited by at least the Florida game.
For sure, yeah. Because I still would expect you're going to have to score some points in that game. You might have to against Pitt in week 2. So, yeah, I would think that they limit some things because somebody else will be preparing to start. I do still think that it helps that it's Ball State. So if you get word on Monday or Tuesday of next week, so just a couple days before the game, the fact that through most of August, Brew has been practicing and running with the first team, that it would be easy to get him out there. And that's a game where you plan to play a lot of guys. So it's a game where guys that run third team in practice at camp, you still hope to get some reps within the game. So if something happens next week and they do get determination that Brew is allowed to play in game number 1, he'll play in game number 1. Start, I don't know. I don't think that matters, but getting him out there and having him play as soon as possible will help him, will help this offense, will help Hendon Hooker, because you have a senior quarterback out there that has been working on establishing connection with a newcomer in McCoy and younger players who are emerging. You have some freshmen you're trying to get in the mix. So I think going into game number 1, Cedric Tillman, Jacob Warren, Princeton Fant, your running backs, Jalen Hyatt, this is still a real breakout opportunity for him. That's probably where the conversation has to start.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts on Southern California's announcement that they even did a graphic and a video or a visual element and tweeted out. And I've covered a lot of these things. I know the transfer rule is very different, but I can tell you that with junior college players, or even going way back, Prop 48 players, which you might not even remember, but I can tell you that there were eligibility issues in camp oftentimes. Calling a school like a junior college school was something that I attempted early on and got zero response because they would just say it was up to the NCAA. As far as Southern California and the way they responded, I came away with he doth protest too much. What did you make of Southern California's response, USC's response to what they've done in the Brew Mccoy situation?
Well, I found this whole thing to be odd and complicated for sure. I have not viewed this as simple as you just fax over a sheet of paper and they sign it and they send it back. I think that's kind of how this is being viewed. The comparison I've made, Dave, is this is not when you're in high school and you have an early dismissal form and you take it to the secretary and she just signs it and you get to go to your dentist appointment. It's a little more complicated than that. So with this NPO form, non-participation opportunity form, I look at it as, okay, you have all these bullet points. Yes, the AD signs it, but there's no way that he's the one that's making the ultimate decision of whether this can be signed because you've had this legal battle with Brew Mccoy. You wonder what can happen in the future. You don't know there. You do have to turn it into the NCAA. I imagine you want it to be as accurate as possible. And somebody that you've been in litigation with previously, it becomes a lot more complicated in that case. The tweet with the graphic with the statement, they at least said, hey, we're good with him playing at Tennessee, because some schools, Tennessee in the past, not with this regime, but with previous, would not have gone that far. You remember cases with players like Bryce Brown when he wanted to go to Kansas State. They wouldn't even release him. They wouldn't let him go on scholarship at Kansas State. And we're very serious about it. The late Aaron Douglas, I thought was a tragic situation because I thought what Derek Dooley did was awful. So in those situations, they wouldn't even release him to go somewhere else on scholarship. So could USC have handled this better? My guess is maybe verbally in communication, but we're also kind of going off what we hear, not what we know was said between the two parties. So I think it's complicated. I think ultimately the NCAA should say, okay, USC's cool with him playing. He did sit out last year, and that was because of a suspension, but he sat out last year. He's transferred to Tennessee. Academically, if he's good to go, I think the NCAA should clear Brew Mccoy to play in this transfer era that we're in. We've seen other players transfer multiple times and be able to play. All cases are not the same, especially to the NCAA. But I think USC putting out a statement, as maybe odd as it looked with a graphic connected to it, publicly endorsing him playing elsewhere, I think the NCAA should say, okay, he can play elsewhere.
Well, my co-host on Off the Hook Sports, Amanda LaFratta, thought it was worded very specifically as to not give it time. Okay, so you agree it was worded. There was no real time frame given of when they filled it out. So, yes, it's not.
Well, no, I'm sorry. When I say yes, I thought it was worded specifically when when USC statement said that they have responded promptly and accurately. I thought that was very key, because that could also mean everything in that form that Tennessee's asking us to sign would not be accurate. And that would be the issue. And just to be clear, if I'm USC's AD, or flip the situation, Dave, if I'm Danny White at Tennessee and we have a player who has left and we are willing to help that player be ready to play right away, but my compliance office and or legal counsel says, hey, everything in that form is not accurate, you should not sign it, then I would not sign it. So I wouldn't go against advice if that's what USC's AD is receiving, to not sign it, so that I can help another school and a former player who previously sued us. I just wouldn't do that. So again, flip the script. If a player had left Tennessee and there had been some real issues behind the scenes, and Tennessee was asked to sign a form that Tennessee's lawyer said don't sign, I don't think fans would tell Danny White to sign it.
No, I definitely see your point there. I would like to ultimately know where the fault lies, because it is not like a permission slip, agreed, but there will be a $2 million house sold in Knoxville today that took less time than this did. So there has to be a happy medium. If you had a guess, where does the fault lie? NCAA, Tennessee didn't provide whatever they needed, or USC didn't provide whatever. I mean, where do you see the broken chain link?
Well, I think the fault lies with the NCAA, because they make these cases so complicated. I think both schools should look out for their own best interests. I think Tennessee should look out for Brew Mccoy because he plays for Tennessee now. USC doesn't owe Brew McCoy anything, from what I can tell. So, to be clear, I think Brew should be cleared to play based on all the knowledge that I have, but I think he should be cleared to play by the NCAA. I don't think everything should be up to USC to make that happen. And I think Tennessee should do everything that it can, and that is try to get USC to sign a form and try to convince the NCAA to go ahead and sign off on him playing. And that's the route that Tennessee should be aggressive in trying to get him to play. But rarely do I think a school owes the former player who left anything other than helping to the best that they can without putting themselves at any kind of risk. That's the issue. Like, comparing this to other transfers, well, rarely have we seen the player who's transferring sue his former school. Like Justin Powell is one of the comparisons recently, because he was just cleared to play at Washington State and he had just left Tennessee. Justin Powell never sued Tennessee. There's no issue there between the two sides. There was a clear issue between Brew McCoy and USC. So that's not taking a side, but USC is going to stand up for itself before it helps the other party that it suspended and then sued the school, right? So, if a player leaves Tennessee, I'm flipping the script for a reason. If a player leaves Tennessee and that player had sued Tennessee previously, fans would not be saying, hey, do everything you can to help that player. So Tennessee fans are standing up for Brew McCoy and should, and Tennessee standing up for Brew and should, but USC is going to make sure that it takes care of itself, and that's what I would expect as well.
Yeah, and you answered what I would have answered when it boils down to it, the NCAA. So, they recently had, in June, I believe, 40 layoffs. And I don't know how the money doesn't ever get to the NCAA office, because there's a lot of it, but it doesn't seem to. And they just seem to be understaffed 20 years ago and in 2022. That to me is just incredibly befuddling that it hasn't gotten better. That to me is the question mark. I mean, I literally, this conversation is 20 years old, Josh. It's bizarre.
Well, that's why you continue to have stories and reports of what could be changing in the future, with at least college football breaking away and doing its own thing, maybe under the college football playoff umbrella. I don't know that they're going to make the right choices in the future, but this connection between at least college football and the NCAA, I think it's going to break up in the future. So, yeah, it's just a mess. And by the way, you have so many athletes out there. There's not only the Brew McCoy case out there. LSU's been voicing its public complaints about its running back, John Emery, and that's an internal thing. He's not a transfer. It's an academic clearance, but you do have more cases to deal with. What I think Tennessee hopes will help is that you have Donnie Plowman, a chancellor who is very respected both within the SEC and in the NCAA office, and maybe that will help, and Danny White and an administration that I think is really respected as well. So those connections, I think ultimately will have a chance to help Tennessee. And my guess is that this gets resolved, but I can't sit here and guarantee that it does by week 1 or even week 2. Everybody's guessing, and that's the frustration, is that it's been an annual conversation about getting a player cleared, and every case has been a little bit different, but this is an important player for Tennessee within the offense. That's been made pretty clear by Tennessee's head coach.
I was told by somebody that would know that Brew McCoy might be the most talented player on Tennessee's roster right now, regardless of position.
Wow, that's a statement. I mean, he has
that is a statement. I mean, that's based off high school, but just
I think there's really high upside for what he could do, considering he had hip procedure in the spring, rehab part of the summer, hasn't played in a long time, and day one didn't look all that good, and since then has looked a whole lot better. So that would tell me he has a chance to keep getting better, and that's something Tennessee would love to see. Now, if he has a big year, my guess is that you'd probably like to go ahead and make a jump to the NFL. He's 4 years out of high school as a former top 10 overall prospect. There's some really talented players on this team. Some of them are really young if we talk about high upside potential. But for this year's team, the 2022 team with the chance to make the biggest impact, yeah, I'd say Brew still ranks pretty high. On Josh and Swain, we did our top 10 players on offense and on defense, and I had Brew right there in the middle of the pack on offense, and that was before he had stepped foot on the practice field. So room to grow for sure for him.
Maybe instead of the hashtag free Brew McCoy, we should go with the hashtag of keep Brew McCoy. Because if he plays work with me, you're already smiling.
Oh, no.
No. If he plays a limited amount, then Tennessee can keep him for another year when they won't have Cedric Tillman. They'll be breaking in a new quarterback. So hashtag.
Are you saying Tennessee's slow playing this so he plays?
Yes.
Stop.
He has his breakout game against Alabama. 200 yards, but it's not enough game tape for the Mel Koppers of the world to love him. How about that?
I'll check with my sources on that, but I'll guess I'll get some pushback on it. That's my guess. I will say my favorite conspiracy has been that Pitt agreed to not take issue with Jordan Addison and USC if USC would complicate things for Brew McCoy because Tennessee is going to play Pitt this season in week 2.
Wow.
There's no way that's true, but I genuinely appreciated the conspiracy on that one.
Yes, that's good stuff. I had trouble following that one. He's Josh Ward of the Sports Animal.
It's college football, Dave. It's a wild, complicated, frustrating and beautiful sport.
Yeah, I would say all that's accurate. Daniel on our message feed saying USC took his livelihood, referring to Brew McCoy based on what happened in PO. That's the document that was signed to allow him to be eligible immediately. Says he's in good standing with the university, so you took his money, told him he couldn't play, but he's in good standing. Puts USC directly in the crosshairs of a lawsuit. Okay, so I'm not going to argue with any of that, Daniel, but here's what I would add as a flip side, if I may. And that is simply this, that he did sue the university. So we do have to look at this from both sides. And I thought Josh did that. He did sue the university. He left for Texas and came back. So in this particular instance, Daniel, I'm with you. I think USC could be in the crosshairs of a lawsuit. My guess is that Brew McCoy will make so much money playing football, he's not going to be worried about the lawsuit. But on the flip side, we do have to look at this from a fair perspective on both sides. Southern Cal has dealt with a lawsuit. It has dealt with a player that left and came back. So are they in any hurry to help Tennessee or Brew McCoy become eligible? No. I don't think they are at all. I don't think that's the situation. All right, it's time for today's tough question. What do you expect out of one Brew McCoy? So let's get to today's tough question now. Today's tough question is brought to you by The Mattress Place. The Mattress Place, 22 years on Chapman Highway, Marine Corps veteran, owned, A+ accredited, member of the Better Business Bureau, over 225 5-star reviews on Google, a huge selection of 2 flip-sided flippable mattresses like the old days. No gimmicks, just 30 to 70% off. So feel free to take part in our feed via Twitter or YouTube. And I will ask today's tough question right now. Today's tough question is, again, brought to you by The Mattress Place. So today's tough question is, I believe it's going to happen this time. I feel good about it.
Hooker and Amanda LaFratta.
There we
drinking
go.
My sake, kimosabi?
Oh my God.
Oh, those darn elements. Those darn production elements. All right, so today's tough question. Let's talk some Brew Mccoy here for a second, if we may. Set aside your fandom. Set aside that fantastic hooker shirt that you just bought. By the way, reduced prices. Go to offlicksports.com. Maybe a player of the same name. But today's tough question is pretty simple. It is set aside your fandom. Set aside the hooker shirt. What do you expect out of Ball State? Don't use the heart. Use the head. Knowing the NCAA and the fact that Tennessee, just like any other school, has had to deal with the NCAA. So the fans listening here are a learned fan base. They know about the NCAA for better or for worse. They know the stupidity of it. They know what happens in the Bruce Pearl situation when you don't comply. They know that players might not be eligible forever. You know the fan base. Okay, or you know the NCAA. This fan base knows the NCAA. So what do you expect out of Brew Mccoy in the opener? What do you honestly expect? And I'm going to give you 3 options. You can vote on Twitter. You can give me your input right here. Number 1, and I'm purposely vague on these because I want to get your thoughts and I want you to be able to ascertain what a huge impact might be. So the choices are huge impact, minor impact. So that's playing. So let's say huge impact, just playing. And then the last will not be eligible. So those are your 3 choices that are on Twitter, or you can go ahead and share on this right now. JL says nothing, won't be eligible till game 2. Golly, JL, it's like you're reading my mind, man. I really, that's kind of where I was as of this morning. When I woke up this morning, and I had a weird feeling, JL, we would hear something yesterday, but when I went to bed last night and I still hadn't heard anything, when my head hit the pillow, I thought to myself, he's not going to be eligible for the opener. So I'm about 60-40 if I can cushion it just a little bit. I'm about 60-40 he won't be eligible. 40% he will be eligible to play, and he'll play in a limited role. As far as huge impact, I don't see how that could happen. Because, A, it's Ball State, so he could catch a couple of touchdown passes in the first half, but he's not going to play for long. We all know that. So, yes, he could have a significant impact, but huge impact, that's why I picked that word. I don't think he's going to have a huge impact in the opener, even if he's eligible as of noon on Thursday, which is, if you're watching live, he's not eligible now. This is recorded on Thursday morning. So I would have, if you made me pick between the 3, I would probably say just playing. But I feel from the people I've talked to and just the way this is unfolding, I feel like Brew Mccoy is less likely to play in the opener than he was a couple of days ago. It's just my feel for the situation, not reporting anything. I tell you what, I'll report to you right now. They got some darn good wings at Biles Automotive Group and right down the road at Big Orange Phillies. They bring you each and every week our fantastic ball report with John Adams that will air tomorrow. But when you go to Big Orange Phillies, know that they have the wings. They are absolutely fantastic. Tell us about it, Mr. Biles.
Biles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant. It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes, folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
There's your bear.
This is Al's Dish Barbecue Supply, so come on in and see all the different rubs and sauces we have, plus a complete line of Green Mountain grills. Don't be overwhelmed. We have plenty of help so you can produce the best barbecue and amaze your family and friends. Barbecue is America's food. We'll do what we can to bring you all the best products. We're Al's Nest Barbecue, where Chattanooga goes to grill.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Yes, it certainly is. And Chris Landry joining us now of LandryFootball.com. And we are joined by him each and every Thursday and Monday at 9 Eastern Time and, of course, 8 CST, as the kids like to call it. Chris, how are you, sir?
Good. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm well. 1 week away in Knoxville from Tennessee hitting the field, and just in a couple of meetings yesterday, an awful lot of excitement. And I know there's excitement everywhere. Nobody says, "Oh, we'll be lucky to win 2 games this year." I mean, nobody actually says that. Even Vanderbilt's probably predicting 7 or 8 wins.
Oh, look, Vanderbilt's trending to the best job in the country according to Clark Lee. So I don't know. I mean, Hawaii better watch out this weekend.
Yeah, Nick Saban's going to need to cruise north.
Oh yeah, he's just telling me, if he can get that Alabama program to where he can hold on to improve the next time he play Vanderbilt, he'd be in good shape.
We don't have time to get in this, but I had somebody mention to me yesterday, and he was an Alabama fan. He said, "You know who they'd call? They'd call Lane, but I don't think I want him." I'm like, they're not going to call Lane Kiffin to replace Nick Saban. I mean, just in 30 seconds or less, how crazy is that?
No, I don't think that's where they're going to go. Nick is going to – well, a lot of it has to do when the timing is. Everybody's making that speculation, but, I just use this as an example. If you think about hot coaches around the country, who was hotter than Tom Herman a few years ago? I mean, he's just, so the point is he can't even find work. So my point is the guy that they're going to hire is probably somebody that's completely off the radar right now because he's not going to likely step down in the next year or two. So I think that answer of who it's going to be is going to depend more about when it's going to be.
Well, and let's remember Nick Saban, I thought was a very questionable hire when he went to LSU.
Look, trust me, I pushed hard for LSU to hire Nick Saban back when they hired Jerry DiNardo. And then, I was, with my background with Nick, working with him in Cleveland, I pushed the administration hard. And actually, by the time that Mark Emmert got there and they went ahead and hired Nick Saban, I had to convince Nick Saban that the LSU job was worthy of his consideration at that point.
Right.
And of course that worked out well, but you're correct in that everybody in Baton Rouge, oh my God, a Midwest guy, a Big Ten guy, awful fit, not going to work. No one admits to that now, but that's what was going on. That's what everything. And of course I thought it was the greatest hire because I knew the guy firsthand, worked with him, he and Belichick in Cleveland. So I was thrilled with it. And I actually did something that I don't do because it's hard, but I said, I felt so strongly about it. I said, he'll win a national championship at LSU, which at that time they hadn't done since 1958 under Paul Dietzel. And it's like, what? Yeah, no, because he not only got hired at LSU, he was the highest paid coach in the country. Even back then,
I didn't remember that.
1.2 million. 1.2 million is what they paid him. That was the highest paid coach in the country in 2000. We're 2022, and now it is not 1.2 million. It's 11.2 or 11.7 or whatever. So, yeah, no, things certainly have a way of changing over time.
Want to turn to the balls, get your thoughts on a couple of different things and the Brew Mccoy situation, because you gave us some insight. I want to dig a little bit deeper into, frankly, poor hosting by me, because I should have dug a little bit deeper into something you said earlier in the week. And I want to do that. Chris's appearance brought to you in part by Craft Treats. Craft Treats full spectrum CBD treat contains minor cannabinoids that increase the benefits of CBD. So that means that anxiety that your pet might have, whether it's car ride or storm in my particular case, or if your dog's older like my pet, arthritis, it can help with that too. So that is what Craft Treats is all about. So check out crafttreats.com. Okay, so you said something that, frankly, I didn't catch at first. And because, as you might know, I've got a lot going on. But I wish I would have. Because you said you talked to USC's coaches and over the weekend, even about the Brew Mccoy situation. And that was about the time it was starting to percolate with Southern California releasing their announcement via Twitter. Let me take a step back based off what you told me. And let me ask you, Lincoln Riley doesn't have the best reputation in the SEC. I think a lot of people, among fans. Does he seem like the type of guy that would try to add any sort of roadblock in this sort of transfer? Does he strike you as that sort of guy?
No, he doesn't. Now, that doesn't mean that he's not doing it, but I don't. That is not typically him. And nobody's brought in more transfers and had cooperation than them. I mean, they brought in 23. 23. Now, there's big transition at places like LSU and USC, big time programs. They won't do that every year. But so I don't think so. Now, look, there's some I don't know. There's a little bit of, I call it sibling rivalries, not among siblings. Like let's not sugarcoat it that Josh Heupel was run out of his alma mater, Oklahoma, and the guy that kind of was the darling that they brought in was Lincoln Riley. So there is a little bit of a, it's just human nature, when it just a competitive nature, not anything sinister, but could there be something there? Could Lincoln have done something? I don't know. I sure anything could be possible, but I don't really get that to be the issue. My point to you was that the coaches there, and this is USC, this is not Lincoln Riley, but Brew McCoy's been on USC's campus twice, and he's chosen to leave twice. There's not like, they don't look at it as, well, we really like to keep this. I mean, they're not real enamored with Brew McCoy. And again, they're two sides to a story. They recognize his talent. I don't think they really care to have somebody that's wanted to leave twice to be in their program when they're trying to build a new program and get new people there. You follow me? In other words, they've encouraged people at USC to leave because they want, to get guys that are comfortable, because they're going to do things differently at USC.
Well, now,
that doesn't mean anything wrong with Brew McCoy or anything wrong with USC. It's just, kind of people tend to want to do things and see things a little bit differently. So I don't know what that means and why the holdup is. I mean, from the Tennessee side and the media that's covering them, it certainly, USC is the holdup. It very well may be. I don't have any evidence of that, but it could be. It's either that or it's the NCAA. There's no reason to think that Tennessee's done anything wrong from an administrative standpoint, because they certainly are the one that absolutely wants to have him. I don't think the NCAA, I mean, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And I don't think USC cares whether Brew McCoy is at Tennessee or Texas or, just as long as he's not with them, because they're not really, they understand the talent, but they're not really concerned about him. So I don't know that there's much there, but I don't know that, Dave, to be certain. I just mentioned that I talked to USC coaches, not about this, but about other things. And I brought it up and it came up and it was like kind of now this is coaches now, so they may have a different view. People in administration may have some grudge against Brew McCoy or, that I'm not aware of. But the coaches are like, not even given a second thought. They've not even thought about Brew McCoy as a Trojan for 6 months.
And I discussed this earlier on the show with Josh Ward and of the Sports Animal. You told me that you think that Brew McCoy, as far as ability, elite ability, has as much as anybody on Tennessee's roster. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, he was a 5-star, and that's not why he's got elite ability, but it was legitimate. Everybody thought he was very, very talented. As I've also mentioned, though, that doesn't mean I think he's going to necessarily be great at Tennessee. He has the talent to do it. There's a reason why he's transferred twice. In today's world, you can't put a scarlet letter on him and say, bad guy, but they've got a little bit of a reputation. They're just the folks at Texas, weren't real pleased with him. The folks at USC weren't real pleased with him. Why is that? Don't know. It just two sides to a divorce. Tennessee's really happy with him, but that's the case. It usually is when they come there, and if he doesn't do things right, then he won't be happy. But he's got a load of talent. He just hasn't done it yet. We'll see if he gets that chance. He will, I think. It's just a matter of time, and then we'll see what he does with it.
Yeah, some of this ultimately has to fall on Brew's shoulders. I think that it's too easy just to point the finger at administration at Southern Cal, football coach Southern Cal, NCAA, whatever the case may be.
Same thing with Texas. You got two schools now that have said basically, it's just not working out.
Now, I will say this: I've seen a lot of players, and you and I talked about some of the ones that we've seen really, really flip the switch. And Alvin Camaro is my prime example. You can go for, and I know he's in an issue now, but you can go from a guy who Nick Saban really didn't want around anymore to junior college to coming up with the right attitude. And if you have ability, bingo, bango, you can be an NFL star. The key is if you have ability. Chris, you and I can't do that right now, but he could. Brew could do that, but some of the blame has to fall on his shoulders. I want to remind you, Viles Automotive Group is your home for all drivers in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. They've got the selection, used cars, trucks, and SUVs in inventory. Also, they can do auto financing right there on the spot, and they keep you going with their car service and repair work. That's Viles Automotive Group on Callahan. JL saying that maybe since this is the second time he's left, maybe USC is slow in feeling just to be a pain to Brew, wasting the school's time and nothing concerning UT. That all could be possible. At the end of the day, let's work off a couple of different assumptions because you've been in these coaches' rooms. So I'm going to give you this scenario as of Friday, 8 a.m., and tell me how it affects what you do. So I'm going to have 3 different scenarios. So if we can run through these kind of quick. Number 1, 8 a.m., Friday morning. This tapes on Thursday. If you're watching live, thank you, but it does tape on Thursday. So 8 a.m. Friday morning, he is eligible. Boom, done. How big of a part of the game plan can he be in the opener 6 days from that point?
I think pretty significant. He's gotten a lot of work for him, and so I think it's pretty easy to integrate him into the game plan.
Okay. Tuesday, 8 a.m., you get the notice that Brew McCoy is 100% eligible, good to go. How big of a part of the game?
Same thing. I think it really is about more important to prepare that he's not going to be there. You know, just prepare,
Okay.
and if he's available, you plug him in. Now, I do think, you know, Tuesday's fine. I think you miss Tuesday's practice. You know, you miss Wednesday's practice. It's hard to get. I mean, you can have him in the game plan, but, you know, not as many reps. But I think you can get him in there in certain packages pretty easily, even if they decide later in the week. But they may just, you know, depending on, you know, conditioning and everything, which should be fine. You know, it's not like an injured guy, you know, which is kind of the same but different in terms of how much work has he got and how physically ready is he. This guy's going to get, you know, he's going to be in the right physical shape, or should be.
That's interesting that you would say that, because that's why I like Chris's insight, because I would have thought it would have been on a Tuesday, 2 days before, limited game plan. But you think that what essentially is a 2 day before practice, you think that's important. So that I find very interesting. Now,
Yeah. Now, I mean, they just say this now. Tuesday morning, you know, you don't miss practice and you go right in. You start missing Tuesday's practice, and then it's, you know, say Wednesday afternoon, you miss Wednesday's practice. It's a different story. You're less likely, because he doesn't have the reps and the looks against the opponent. But let me just say this. Against Ball State,
yeah, they should be okay.
it's not that big a deal. Now, if you're lining up and you're playing, I mean, who is it that might be playing Miami? I mean, a good team, not, you know, that's a little different situation. I think he's eligible. They play him. I think that depending on the rules and their protocol, if he doesn't practice all week because he can't, well, then maybe he doesn't start. Somebody else does. But I don't think. I mean, this is not brain surgery. It's just getting him on the field. Yeah, it's really getting him acclimated and how you want to do it. Sit him, play him. It's not going to be that big a deal. You get into the first, you know, SEC game, and it's a big game on the road, and that's a little bit different kettle of fish to deal with.
Yeah, so it's not just brain surgery, it's Ball State. That could be their new catchphrase.
They won't say that like that. They won't say it. I don't think that would go over well. I don't think it would go over well.
It's not rocket science. It's Ball State. I think there's something that we could work on there. Maybe a trademark.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you the third scenario. He's just not eligible. Who else steps up? Because we know Cedric Tillman is the guy, but who gets most of those snaps?
You know, I mean, I think the receiving core is really good. I think they've got 3 quality receivers.
Are you including Brew? Okay, without Brew.
Yeah, without Brew Mccoy. I mean, I do. I think they're going to be good. I think just Brew Mccoy gives them another playmaker, and it gives them depth in terms of injury. So I think they're fine. I think for them to be a different level good, Brew Mccoy doing what Brew Mccoy can do gives them just something special. Now, as we've said before, if he doesn't play well, or he doesn't, you know, do the things, doesn't show the improved maturity, they're still going to be good. It just may not be as explosive as they could be if this guy was as, you know, on point as they're capable of doing. So that's the way I see, you know, this offense, this offense as a whole, and this receiving core as a group.
Chris, what are you hearing from Tennessee's coaches about Squirrel White? Because when camp opened, I think everybody was very excited about Squirrel, and things have gotten quieter, which could mean that some people think that, or Tennessee's coaches maybe think that the dog days of camp got to him. But the flip side of that is it could be that Tennessee's coaches talked about him so much early they don't want to pump up a freshman too much. But I just your thoughts on Squirrel and what he can do early.
Well, in you know, when we talked about him initially, we and this is typically what happens. People see practice, or, you know, if media sees it, or certain people that they allow in to see it. Boy, that Squirrel White's good. Boy, he's explosive. He's fast. So it's, you know, it's eye catching. It doesn't mean that he runs right, the correct routes, that he understands coverage recognition, that he is where he's supposed to be when he's supposed to be there. Okay, so it just, hey, this guy flashes. Well, you need to show him. Well, yeah, you do, but he's going to need to learn, and it's going to take some time. So what normally happens is you hear a lot of that. This guy's really explosive, has lots of potential, just like we talk about McCoy or anybody else. That's one thing. That doesn't mean he's going to be a great player. Doesn't mean he's going to be a good player. That is to be determined. And I think, whether it's the dog days of summer is usually code for he's just going through the normal process of trying to learn things that are integral to your offensive success. And I think he can be really good as a slot guy. I think he could be really good. See, I think here's the danger with it. I think his strength is his versatility, that you can line him up in different spots. But when you do that, he has to learn multiple positions. I don't think people get that. Well, he's a receiver, just line him up here. What's the difference? It's a huge difference. You see the field from a different spot. Your assignment's different. So while he is, and people say, well, why don't they do this with him? Well, the reason most of the time is because if a guy's struggling to learn one thing, you don't want to teach him three things and really confuse him. So you need to find the right niche for him initially and then grow it. And I think the best way is to kind of get him comfortable in a spot and then have him grow. It's nothing to do with a pointing a finger at the kid. I just think it's a normal process that people get overly excited about the skill set of a player, the explosive ability of a player, and tend to think that this guy's going to be an All-American right away. It usually doesn't work that way, and it takes a lot of time to develop that. And we'll see how quickly they can develop him and how quickly he can take to it. That's the variable to how much he plays and how effective he's going to be. But I think he's very talented, and I think he's very versatile, and I'm curious to see how quickly he's able to adjust it.
Chris's appearance brought to you in part by Pedigo of Chattanooga, locally owned store where you'll be treated like family. The region's foremost electric bike experts have put their hearts into helping you find the perfect electric bike and get the most out of it for many years to come, because they have a service department with e-bikes. Trust me, I know e-bikes. Most of the places that you can order e-bikes online do not have a service department. So if something goes wrong, you got a problem. Not with the Pedigo. So go Pedigo Chattanooga. And Chris, as far as Tennessee and Hendon Hooker, we're going to run a bit of an audio that we had from Jacob Warren later. And it got me thinking a little bit about how much different Hendon Hooker must be now as of August 2022 as opposed to last year. Because he said this time last year he was antsy. Well, who wouldn't be? He's running out of eligibility, and he's not named the starter. So in his mind, whether or not he thought this, here's what he's got to do, Chris. He's got to overtake the starter. He's got to lead an incredibly explosive offense, and he's got to be one of the greatest stories in college football to get to this point. Who wouldn't be antsy back then? But not being antsy, how much does that help him?
And the biggest thing is learning a new offense.
Oh, yeah, I left that part out.
And, you've got a lot more comfort now. And I think that, confidence comes with, you know what to do, how to do it. And when you leading, you can't lead unless guys have confidence that you as a quarterback know what you're doing. When you get in a huddle, everybody thinks leading is a guy coming in and saying, shut up, here's the damn play. And you go, that doesn't lead. If they don't believe that you know what you're doing and that they can lead you and you're going to lead them and you're going to get them into the right play and make a play and get the ball in the hands of playmakers and make a play for the offense, you can't lead because they're not going to buy into it. It's just bravado. because I'm going to tell you what happens if you're one of those guys that talk and you don't produce. The attitude in the locker room and in the huddle is shut the bleep up. I mean, really, but when you are that guy and you're confident, then you can lead. Then they will buy in. They will believe in you. Now, you hear people all the time, college and pro level. I love it when they ask, do you believe in your fill in the blank quarterback? Not many people are schooled enough to not say, oh, he scares me to death every time he gets under center. Yeah, of course not. You're going to say the good things, but to truly believe it, to truly buy in, you got to have confidence. Well, being another year in the system, he's got a whole offseason to work in it. I think he has a better feel for what to do, and the players around him are more confident that he does, and they will go and follow him. So I think that is a big advantage that he has this year versus last year. And it's common sense, but sometimes common sense is not all that common, and people don't think about it in those terms. And just, because people will say things like this, and this, and I know you said it, like, well, they selected the wrong quarterback at the beginning of the year last year. Well,
Yeah.
You can say that, but if he wasn't ready and Hendon Hooker goes in and he throws 5 picks against Pitt and plays poorly, what does the season turn out to be then? He loses confidence. My point is so, yeah, it's easy to say, man, Milton, he overthrew everybody, all game. Yeah, it could have been different if Hendon Hooker played. It might have been a different game. But it might not have played out as the same way during the course of the year, because I think that, Hendon's had to step up. They were, at the time, all you have to evaluate on is how guys handle in practice until you play in games. And to that point, pretty obvious Hendon Hooker hadn't won the job in their eyes, the coach's eye. But they went to him by basically they had to. I think they would have stayed with Milton longer if the play wasn't as bad. And Hooker wasn't perfect by any stretch, but he at least kind of stabilized things, and he wasn't all that good at times. But then he got better and better and better. So, that's why Tennessee's one of those. I put something up yesterday on LandryFootball.com talking about all the starting quarterbacks. And there's still a number of every school in the country. And some of them are still in a battle, meaning they're going to decide between one or the other, but you don't know how it's going to play out. Tennessee's in a position now that last year at this time, the question would be, who's going to be the starter? Can he lead them? Now we know who the starter is and at quarterback. And so that kind of stabilizes the most important position on the field.
Chris, I want to ask you a question in a weird way for a specific reason, because I know your thoughts on Hendon Hooker. I know you think he's talented, but he also is a great fit for what Josh Heupel does. Because he step in and run a West Coast offense, we don't know that. So I want to ask you specifically about the mesh. Okay, so as far as a quarterback and the offensive system meshing together, how many programs in the entire NCAA do you look out there and say they might have a better situation than Tennessee as a quarterback and offensive mesh? And I know I'm going really off schedule here, so I'm kind of throwing you a curveball, but it just does. Hendon Hooker has limitations. I don't think he gets the ball out as quickly, at least last year, as he should have, but he's a great fit for this offense. So how many programs out there are as good a fits from the quarterback offensive perspective?
Well, let's just take the SEC. Let's just start there. I mean, I think Arkansas and KJ Jefferson's fit is outstanding. I think Alabama and Bryce Young fits outstanding. I think the fit for the style and the quarterback for Mississippi State is outstanding. I think there's unknowns in other spots. So those are 3, along with Tennessee and Hendon Hooker. He would be in that group. Where I'd put him, I don't know. But yeah, those are 4 right there that I think are really good fits. Now, some of them can fit in other systems and what they're in, but they're a really good fit. Around the country, there's some good ones that haven't given it a a lot of thought in that respect. It's a really good situation. But as I kind of look and see and go over, I think it's, I think there's a lot of question marks. I give you another one that's a great fit, but bless his heart, he may be gone for the entire year. Sam Hartman runs Wake Forest offense for Dave Clawson very, very well. He's not there, so he's going to be gone. Well, maybe for the year. I think those are some others that I think just jump out at me just within the league. C.J. Stroud's outstanding for any offense, but really good fit for what Ohio State does, and with all the guys that they have at receiver. So I think Caleb Williams is going to be a great fit at USC. The transfer over there. So those are some that I think that jump out at me, and hopefully that kind of get you a feel for it.
Interesting. I sometimes I think we need to give Tennessee fans a hug after what they've been through for the past 12 years. So let me ask you this. So on today's tough question, you might have seen it on Twitter. Today's tough question, I said, you get three options. Brew McCoy in the opener will have a huge impact, just be playing, or will not be eligible. One is running away with it. Chris, do you want to guess which one?
He won't be eligible.
I know, it's so terrible. Tennessee fans are waiting for the others. You are completely impartial. I consider myself impartial, but I did go to UT, and I know not everybody views me that way. So, and I do have orange on my logo. So, but you are completely impartial. Tennessee fans should be happy about this season, right?
Yeah, I think that it is, and it's funny dealing with fans because as a coach and as a scout, I didn't deal with a lot of fans and didn't pay a lot of attention to it, but doing a lot of shows and getting to interact with fans is a lot of fun because you see how they see it. I think sometimes fans they tend to maybe, and maybe it's the case with Tennessee fans, they're jilted a little bit, but maybe wanting to say, well, he's not going to be there. Therefore, if he's there, it's so they prepare for the worst. They maybe think the worst so that they're not disappointed when it does happen. You see, I told you, Dave, he wasn't going to be there. And if he's there, it's like, oh, great. I never thought it would, our luck. We finally got some good, I just think people maybe think that way. And you're right. And, I get this a lot of times because fans, isn't it amazing? They all think everybody hates their team.
Right.
Because they don't get it. It's like, well, okay, so and I can't speak for everybody, but to use the analogy, the political analogy, left or right, when you're right down the middle, the people that are for right thinkers think you're a leftist liberal if you're in the middle. If you're, the leftist people think you're a strong right wing guy if you're right in the middle. And that's kind of fans. If you look at it objectively and you don't really care who wins games, well, the fans don't think that way. The fans are far leaning to their school. So if you're right down the middle, then you don't think like us, and you don't. Well, we don't, because not thinking of it as a fan. And so I think that's why people think that. So I think sometimes people take this situation like this in your poll question and say, well, I'm going to, things don't work out. And we usually get, the hammered by the NCAA, or we don't get whatever. And then if it works out, it works out. I think that's probably where people think. And I don't know, my experiences is normally at the last minute.
Yeah,
something happens. But I don't know what the holdup is. I know that is the big media story in Knoxville, that they all know this or that. There's no possible way. They're getting their information from Tennessee sources. And that's a good source to have because they're involved. And I think the Tennessee folks that are involved in this process think that, they either think the holdup is at USC or at the NCAA. Well, I know what's happening is the NCAA is probably telling them that, we're still waiting on this and that. So in their minds, they're saying, So they're letting it be known in the media that it's a problem at USC, which could very well be the truth. But we don't know that for certain. I don't know it. And I don't know that anybody, most people don't normally say, yeah, the problem is with us. And I don't think it is with Tennessee. As I said, they've got the incentive to get everything done and they're to move it along as fast as possible. I think the NCAA and the USC, they don't have as much at stake as Tennessee does in this situation. And that is usually the case. So I hope that for the young man, for Tennessee, they get it resolved soon. But I don't have the answer as to why, even though, again, most people feel they do.
Chris, can you hang with me for a couple of minutes?
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
cool.
As long as you need.
I want to get to this day in sports history. Chris is 29 though, so he might not have not have much perspective on that. So
I was 29. Yeah, I was 29. I remember that fondly.
Yeah, I had a gentleman tell me yesterday. He said, "You're getting ready to turn 50." He goes, "I can barely remember 50." I'm like, "Oh, well, I guess hopefully I'll make it there one day." Big Orange Phillies is the place to go when you want great food in North Knoxville. Big Orange Phillies. Casual shouldn't mean stale, and it doesn't at Big Orange Phillies. Big Orange Phillies. I had the wings on Sunday, and they're awesome, and you can hang out, a lot of space. They've got karaoke. They've got live entertainment. They've got billiards, and they've got darts, and they are awesome. So go to Big Orange Phillies, and you will absolutely love it. All right. Coming up, it is this day in sports history. It is also the one player that I'm going to ask Chris about. He's got during the break to think about it, that I have not asked him about on Tennessee's roster that I should have. And goodness gracious, I've asked about a lot of players over the course of the summer. So if he can come up with one, I'm going to be impressed. Stay tuned. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
Viles here, Viles Automotive on Callahan Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
This is Steve Rain. I own the Midnight Oil and Michelin Tire Direct service station here in Ottawa. It's not a fancy place, never has been, but it's a clean place with clean restrooms and good folks who work here. We sell gas and fix cars, nothing glamorous, but we love what we do, and we're going to keep doing it for a long time to come. There's not many real service stations left, and that's a shame. We're the guys just like the guys back in your hometown. We'll fix your tire, change your oil, and put a new set of Michelins on your car. If you want a Twinkie, you'll just have to keep on going. Thanks for the business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Joined by Chris Landry, Amanda LaFratta feeling under the weather, so get better soon. Chris's appearance brought to you in part by Owl's Nest Barbecue. Owl's Nest Barbecue, they want you to be successful cooking pork butt, brisket, chicken, ribs, and any other protein you'd like to try. They will set you up with the pellets, the chips, the sauces, the rubs. It is just, if you like barbecue, it is an absolute dream. Chris Landry, the one player that I have not asked you about on Tennessee's roster that I should have might be whom?
I'm trying to think about who haven't we talked about. It's probably somebody on the offensive line, although we've talked offensive line a lot.
I think offensive line's a good direction. So what the four returning starters, I like that a lot. So you have, oh my gosh, name just slipped my mind. Moving to right tackle.
Well, we got Crawford that's going to play at left tackle, and obviously we got Darnell Wright at right tackle.
Darnell Wright.
We've talked a good bit about Wright.
So what's in the interior? What's in the middle?
Well, I think it's a pretty good strength. I mean, I think Spraggins and Carvin at guard are very solid, and obviously Cooper Mays. I tell you, Cooper Mays is somebody maybe because he's been there a while and he's been very productive, and maybe people are not concerned about him. But I don't know that we've talked about Cooper Mays a lot. I mean, I don't remember, but he's I think he's a good anchor. And look, and I do think this that. I'll say this. I mean, we talked about the tackle position. Okay, so something happens. Cooper Mays, if you look at it, Carvin, Jerome Carvin, somebody like him is a senior that's been around. He will slide in if he goes down. And then, I think there's some flexibility with Cooper Mays that he can move. But I think Carvin is a really good starting left guard, but he can play center. And I think that's so the key is who's the left guard? Probably Ollie Lane comes in, a redshirt senior, and plays. So if you have an injury at center, then it's going to be about who's going to replace the left guard because Carvin's going to move in from there. I think that the interior is a little bit stronger in terms of how they grade it out than the tackle position, but it's a very important spot. It protects the middle. It allows you, to not only have success running the football, but interior protection. It's much easier to block or from a quarterback standpoint to see the edge pressure coming than if you see it up the middle. You see it quickly in your face, but you can't do a whole lot with it, and it makes you move and throws off the timing of an offense like this. So I think the interior of the offensive line, so maybe somebody like a Jerome Carvin, who's a senior, been around for a while, he's a valuable guy because he's a two-position player. He's a starter at left guard, and he's your starter at center if something happens to Mays.
JL had a question. What we've not talked about is the defense is going to improve on their tackling. So he wanted to throw that out there. You and I have talked defense. I don't know if we specifically talked tackling.
Yeah, look, I mean, in a general sense, improving on tackling is difficult because you don't hit enough. I mean, it's universal in football. I think they'll improve. I mean, I think they'll get better. I think that they've got speed on defense, but it's about the ability to snap and wrap as a tackler. And I think the linebacking core is a little bit better than maybe some people think. It's my opinion. Not great, but I think they're better, and I think they'll be pretty good. But I think the back end is going to be important. You've got to be able to tackle well and help in the run game at safety, and you've got to be able to line up and play in coverage. So the ability to make plays and in the secondary is about being able to match up, line up correctly, play good technique, and being able to switch off correctly. The play at linebacker is about being able to fill, to be able to not overrun, to bring your feet and snap and wrap as a tackler. I think up front they're pretty good at linebacker. While they make plays in pursuit, I think being able to tackle inside is the one area that I think they need to improve upon.
Great question by Joe that I asked you recently. Joe, I would encourage you, please subscribe, by the way, and like, because all kinds of videos. One just went up with Chris yesterday, in which we talked about, I believe, Tennessee's defense, but there was one on Tennessee's offense as well. But Joe had a very good question about the interior of the defensive line, because Amanda makes fun of me because I use the term war daddies. When I say war daddies, I'm talking about those big 300-pounders that have good feet, that can move, that play defensive tackle. That's just me. Somebody said that, and that stuck. What do you think of Tennessee's the interior of their defensive line?
Well, I think Amari Thomas is a good player. I think he can be better and more of a factor. I think that they'll miss Butler. I thought he was a really good player, but I think the key is going to be Garland, and then even the young guy Bryson Eason. Those are the guys that are going to play opposite Thomas. So if Thomas can be as good as I think he can be, which is pretty solid, not great, pretty solid, I think that the other one's a little bit up for grabs. I mean, in Eason, you've got guy that moved pretty well, and he kind of ate his way into a defensive tackle's position. He started off early in camp, and he's got some short area quickness and balance and body control. He's got all the tools. He's just got to. The light has to go on that a defensive tackle. It's the unsung position. I mean, it is you got to eat up blocks, and you got to like to take a beating. I don't know if he has that type of mindset yet, and we'll see if he can develop into that. But I think Garland is the key, and then of course the depth of Eason and Simmons and John Terry and Amari McNeil, which is the redshirt freshman, and the true freshman. Can Jordan Phillips help him? I mean, those type of guys in the rotation are important, because here's the thing to understand, again, with the pace of this offense, with playing as many snaps of defense as you're going to play, very often in the fourth quarter, your backup players are better than your starters, because your starters' legs are tired. So what you give up in terms of experience, fresher legs can help you. So the ability to spell guys at certain points or finish games is going to allow your frontline guys to be on the field for more important snaps, third downs, maybe end of games. So I think the depth is going to be really important. It always is for everybody, not just injuries, but you're going to have to rotate these guys a little bit more so that they can stay fresh, because that's the key. And oftentimes they just weren't really effective in certain situational defensive pressures.
Very true. Very true. Chris, it is time for this day in sports history. So we will do that. And I've got an interesting football angle that I'm going to throw at you. This day in sports history is brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. CityHeatandAir.com. Know that they are about integrity and honesty. So you don't want the people that says that they're going to do the HVAC service thing for $29, and then before you know it, they say you need to spend $10,000. That's not City Heating and Air Conditioning. City Heat and Air. Today's tough question.
We do our research. Have you done your research?
We're working like heck.
Today's tough question. What's the real debate?
You sipping my soupe, Guadalupe?
Exclusively on Off the Hook Sports with Dave Hooker and Amanda LaFratta.
You drinking my sake, kimosabi?
Oh my God.
So we reset today's tough question, which is at about 69% that Brew McCoy will not play at all. And then more appropriately, I will click on the correct element, which is this day in sports history, Chris.
This day in sports history, putting things in perspective, exclusively on Off the Hook Sports with Dave Hooker.
You're so old. When you were a kid, rainbows were black and white.
And Amanda LaFratta.
New kids on the block just called. They wanted you as a backup dancer.
All right, we got there. All right, so we did have one question that I want to get to, JL, the Ohio State transfer, before we get to this day in sports history. Andre Turrentine, I think people think that he's just going to step in and be a starter. Can you give me your thoughts on him before we get to this day in sports history?
Yeah, I don't know that that's going to be the case. I think he's going to play. I think he's going to me, be a factor. I think that you'll see him. I think they'll play him behind Flowers initially, and I'm curious to see where he goes from there. But he's got a lot of talent. It wouldn't surprise me that he's starting at some point. I don't know about week one. We'll see. I would expect Flowers and McCullough at free and strong, but those positions are interchangeable. But I would certainly see some in 3 safety sets. He'd be the first guy, and eventually I think he'll be one of the starting duos at safety.
Take me back, Chris. Would you consider yourself a wise man when you were 20 years old?
No. I thought I was wise, but no, I wasn't. But I was probably a little bit more leveled and mature than most. Because at 20 years old, I was. Let's see, was I 20 when I was a walk-on football player at LSU? Or had I flipped to coaching? I'm trying to figure out the exact year, 2021, when Bill Orangeburger told me you'd be a better coach than a player for us.
I
So I was a little bit mature. Now I wasn't a partier. I wasn't a partier.
When I was 20, I had a pretty interesting reputation. Let's just say that. And I'm going to leave it at that. But that is in days past. So is Las Vegas. So one place I never need to go again. Dwight Gooden, 20 years old, becomes the youngest pitcher ever to win 20 games on this day in 1985.
I remember him.
You talk about a guy that even if you didn't like baseball, that Mets team, you knew who Strawberry was, you knew who Gooden was, because they were just. Now it's come out later that they had all kinds of problems, which often happens. But let me ask you, what football player have you seen flash early? And I'm sure there's a lot, but what one stands out that flashes early and you think, wow, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer, and then it falls off? In this particular case, it was drugs, but falls off for whatever reason. Anybody stand out to you that Dwight Gooden is going to be a generational player?
Yeah, and look, he had a pretty good career. He just wasn't what. But I'll give you there's a whole bunch of them in football, but I would say that Marcus Dupree. Dupree was, God, was he something? Man, was he. He was something. Came out of Philadelphia, Mississippi. Everybody wanted him. What a recruiting battle between Texas and Oklahoma. I mean, everybody recruited him, but he went to Oklahoma. And he was, he was unbelievable. And he went back then, they just put him as a true freshman. He was 11th on the depth chart at running back. Within 3 practices, he was already up to 1. He was unbelievable. And there's a whole litany of issues, some heavy influences from, believe it or not, a preacher from Mississippi where his home. And it just, he just never, that's what we talked about. We talked about with the players, and you never know if their head's on straight or whatever. Now, look, he just never made it to pro ball. Look, this guy was one of the few players that, certainly not emotionally, but physically you'd look at and say, man, this guy could come into the NFL pretty quickly. Ironically, another Oklahoma running back, Adrian Peterson, was one of those guys. Now, Adrian was the real deal, and he was a great player, and he played it. But Marcus was what could have been great one. And for short stretches he was, but didn't last at Oklahoma well, and moved around and played in the USFL a little bit. Got opportunities in the NFL, just never amounted to anything. And he blew up. Speaking of that, he looks, last time I saw him, he looks like a nose tackle. I mean, he's old and, but he just, that's one that he could have been. I mean, you're talking about the greats. You're talking about Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker-ish type guys.
Wow.
This guy had it. I mean, speed and size in an era where you could be dominant. Earl Campbell, you name the greats. He was every bit as talented, but never realized that potential.
Well, JL referenced great 30 for 30 on Dupree.
Yes.
JL, I gotta be honest with you. I saw that one, and I didn't know what Chris just said about, and I trust Chris when it comes to football implicitly. So when he tells me he's that good, I'm going to go back and watch the 30 and 30 because I didn't watch the whole thing because I didn't know that he was that elite. I thought he was probably very good. Okay, so I want to check that out. Honeybee.
If out of high school, in well over 40 years of doing this, he'd be on one hand of the best high school players I've ever seen, ever.
Wow, on one hand.
On one hand. I mean, he's just
wow.
He's one of the absolute all time. I mean, Herschel was dominant in a Class A school. Bo was great. O.J. Simpson was unbelievable at San Francisco Junior College. And I'm just talking running backs now. Adrian Peterson was great. Marcus Dupree was as good as any of them. And just, I would encourage anybody. I did see the 30 for 30, kind of living it. But that was one of those things, man, they camp out and lived in his hometown. It's tough when you got to spend months to Philadelphia, Mississippi to get this one guy. No, I would encourage you and anybody else to go check it out and read about it or wherever you get your, just learn a little bit about Marcus Dupree. What a talent, what could have been type story.
No doubt about it. I think I'll sit down and watch it with a cup of Honeybee's coffee. Honeybee's is the absolute best coffee you're going to find, and you can order it online. If you go to Honeybee's, you are going to the locations. You're going to find, let's say not pretentious like that other place. Go with the bees, not the bucks, because you're going to enjoy Honeybee's. And Honeybee's is fantastic. They've got locations in West Knoxville, South Knoxville, Westtown Mall, and Sevierville. Again, you can order it all online. And if you like coffee, that's the way to go because it's the top 5% of the beans in the entire world. That's pretty strong. It's actually a research adventure that Norris of Honeybee went on to find the best beans of coffee. And I'm not a big coffee drinker. I sat there with Norris and had 3 cups and enjoyed every single one of them. So, Chris Landry, we need a complete breakdown of Vanderbilt, Hawaii for this weekend. No, I'm kidding. I don't want any. I don't want any bit of that.
Check it out for LandryFootball.com because I got one for you. I've got all the games. I've got the breakdowns, what Vanderbilt's looking at, what their roster looks at, and what Ohio. You know who's the coach at Hawaii now, huh? Let me remind folks.
It's June Jones. I don't know.
No. It's Timmy Chang. Remember the quarterback? Yeah, because they ran out Todd Graham. But remember Timmy Chang?
I think he was one of the Tennessee had like 6 years of incredible spring practice running backs. Was Timmy Chang one of those?
No. The quarterback at Hawaii. He played at Hawaii.
Okay.
Yeah, but he's back at his alma mater. And that'll be a 9:30 Central. Wow, that's 10:30 in East Tennessee.
In the morning?
No. At night. It's gonna be on TV. What do I have it? It's the CBS Sports Network. But yeah, if you're looking for that, I do have the breakdowns, the film room breakdown of all the games this weekend, including Vanderbilt, Hawaii. So check that out. We'll have that every week. All the games broken down on Landry Football. So before you put a couple of bucks on it, I'll make the picks and everything. Check that out every week.
Jason said, being about the only game for the entire weekend, I'm likely to watch Vandy.
Jason. Hey, look, underrated game is Nebraska Northwestern. That's earlier in the day, and that's going to be 12:30. Right afternoon on Saturday. So maybe that fits more of people's sleep schedule than 10:30 at night on the East Coast.
The guy that I cannot remember his name, and I've got a Hooker t-shirt for anybody that can message it to me in the next 60 seconds. He played running back and was the cat's meow at Tennessee for spring practice, which seemed to always happen because they wouldn't use their regular running backs. There was like a Kirsten Biggers. There were like guys that you'd never heard of. There were walk-ons that would tote the mail most of the time. but there was one that actually said, I'm going to leave and not be a spring practice star, and went to Hawaii and ended up a starter. And I cannot remember.
You're talking about a running back, though, but Timmy was
Running
a
back.
quarterback. So
Running back.
I'm trying to think there. That's a good question. I don't have to think about that. I'm trying to remember who that would be. I don't really remember that.
I will text you at some point, but
do that because when you do, I'm going to say, oh yeah, but I don't. Doesn't ring a bell. So really good spring, but transferred to Hawaii.
Yeah, there was a period of there where Tennessee literally had probably 5 years in a row of Heisman Trophy winners at spring practice. They didn't win it. They didn't win in the fall, but they won it in spring camp. Get better, Amanda LaFratta. He's Chris Landry. If you don't go to LandryFootball.com, you don't know as much as your friends do about football. I'm Dave Hooker. This is a production of Off the Hook Sports. Thanks for listening. Have a fantastic day, evening, morning, whenever you might be